So today's teaching is based on the teaching that we have been covering so far has been on the suffering that has been experienced, suffering that has been experienced by the human beings. So we have the 6 realms, the 3 upper realms and the 3 lower realms, and of which, even though the higher realms of the human beings, the demigods and the gods, are regarded as the higher realm, we still continue to live in turmoil, and we still go through so much suffering. And even though suffering is not something new to us, even though suffering is something that we are very much accustomed with, but somehow we take our suffering for granted. And then we think the suffering to be the very nature of our lives, and so therefore we think as long as we live there will be suffering, and so therefore there is no way out of it, and then we give up. We are in despair, not only physically in pain but also mentally suffering. And so even though suffering is something that all of us encounter in our day-to-day life, we need to remind ourselves that this is suffering, this is suffering, this is suffering. So sometimes the suffering can be being late to your work, or maybe losing something trivial, something small as getting late to your work, or something very serious as losing your loved ones, or getting into mishaps, accidents, and so on and so forth. So, but whenever these things comes, we don't call them by the name of suffering. We just call them by different names, like, okay, I had an accident, or I lost someone, or I got late for my job, or this and that. So we call each and everything by different names. We don't sort of like put them all together and call it suffering, because that is what it is. Because that is what it really is. Whatever painful experiences that we may be going through, they are all part of one big sort of group called suffering. And so this is what the Buddha Dharma teaches us, that we have to realize that all this is suffering. This is the part of samsara, and this is suffering. And once we realize that this is suffering, then we can question ourselves whether suffering is part of very nature of our lives, or suffering is something that we can get over with. And then comes the detailed teachings of the Buddha. So, as I said earlier, even though some suffering is something that we are very much accustomed with, we always face different phases or different facets of the suffering, and we don't call it suffering per se. And so it is time that we put all of this together, we club them all together and call this suffering. The earlier we realize it, the earlier that we realize this is the very nature of samsara, not the very nature of not that suffering is the nature of our lives, but the suffering is the nature of samsara. The earlier we realize that, the better. So even though suffering is part of our lives, the samsaric lives, we need to teach ourselves, we need to remind ourselves that it is so, because even though we are so used to this experience that we take all of this for granted. Just like taking like breathing, we take breathing for granted, even though it takes effort to breathe in and breathe out. We are so much accustomed to it and we don't realize that. But once you are unable to breathe in or breathe out, that moment everything is gone. So similarly, we have to come into realization that this suffering is not the real. Suffering is not the nature of our lives, our very lives, but it is the nature, of course, of the samsaric life. And unless we get rid of samsaric life, we will always be stuck here. So in order to get ourselves unstuck, we need to sort of remind ourselves to tell us that different part of samsaric life, whether you are in the lower realm or the higher realm, you are always surrounded by suffering. And we covered the gods and the demigods already, and now we are covering the human lives. And in the human lives, the suffering did not come all of a sudden out of the blue, but it all comes from causes and conditions. And the causes and conditions we are covering today, we have been covering since last week, 2 weeks ago, and that is the so-called 10 non-virtuous deeds. And so today we will cover the non-virtuous deeds one by one. Yeah. So as I said, the suffering does not come out of the blue, does not come all of a sudden. It comes from cause and conditions, and the cause and conditions are what we're going to discuss. And the primary cause for suffering is known as the 10 non-virtuous states, which we are going to cover today. So before we start the actual teaching, let's set our motivation to what we call the Bodhisattva motivation, which is to achieve enlightenment. Achieve enlightenment for myself, for the sake of all sentient beings. I want to become the Buddha so that I can help more people than I could at the moment. Janjo bardo dane gyazo je dage juje gebe senam jola benje zange jobara jo dan zoye jana ba Janjo bardo dane gyazo je dage juje gebe senam jola benje zange Mandala sai Zira linje nide genbande Sange Jogun namda jin la je bara Yi da gujoran Menda la gamne yang dara Yeah. So I just remembered. So there's a quote from Lama Tsongkhor Rinpoche, which says that in order to distinguish the wrong from the right from the wrong, in order to know which is right and which is wrong, you have to in order to do the right thing, you have to know the right thing. And in order to know the right thing, you have to learn which is right and which is wrong. And so therefore, study is the most important thing. So Lama Tsongkhor said that. So in this line, we will begin this year's. So even though in the Julian calendar it's already March, in the Tibetan royal calendar it is just the 16th of the first month of the Tibetan calendar. So we would start with a proper motivation and proper with an appropriate manner. So we will start with the studies. So the very reason that we attend the Dharma teachings, of course, there's a lot of blessing to be received from Dharma teachings, but at the same time, it is not the blessings alone. Well, it is not the physical blessings alone that we are seeking. Rather, we are seeking an internal blessing, or what we usually call transformation. So the actual word for blessing, I don't know in English, but in Tibetan, which is chinlap, means to transformation, to transform my mind, my body, my speech into that of the Buddha, that of the Bodhisattvas. The transformation from words to from transformation from bad to good, transformation from good to best, transformation of imperfection to perfection. So that is what we are striving. And in order to do that, we need to study, we need to learn, and that's why we are attending the Dharma talk. And so, like usual, we have the same group of people who have gathered since the same group of people that we have gathered since before the Tibetan New Year are back still. And so I welcome you all, those on Blue Jeans as well as those watching live on Facebook. And so thank you very much. I really appreciate all of you for not because I am a good speaker or anything, but because you are you show a keen interest to learn the Buddha Dharma. So that is something that I can offer, and I'm so happy that I can make this small contribution from my side. Whatever I have studied in the monastery, I believe it has come useful at this moment, that I can offer. I can make this offering of Dharma to you, so that we can all study together. So when I am trying to conduct these classes, I'm also learning a lot of things. So it's like a learning. It's a mutual benefit, not benefit for you as well as benefit for me. So I really take this moment to congratulate you for taking this opportunity, as well as appreciate and rejoice in the action that you have, the decision that you have made today. Now we will initiate the actual teaching, which is the words of my perfect master. And today we are covering the subject of actions, which is the le, or the karma. Karma is Sanskrit. In Tibetan we call it le, or in action. In English it would be an act or an action. And to emphasize what action means, the subject is divided into subject is clarified as cause and effect. So usually when we say karma, we are talking about cause and the effect. Normally we look for karma, we look at when something happens to us, something good or bad happens to us, we call it karma, as if karma is as if the karma is the effect or the karma is the result. But actually karma is the cause, and the effect or the result of the karma is what we are experiencing. So when we are experiencing something good or not, actually when we experience something good or bad, we are actually not experiencing the karma itself, but the effect of the karma, or in other words, it is not the action but the reaction of the action that we have performed. That is what we are experiencing. So in order to understand what we should be doing, it is made very clear that if we know what we should not be doing, then what we should be doing would be very much clear. So therefore, instead of telling us what are the 10 virtuous deeds are, we were taught in the negative. So instead of instead of saying what are the 10 virtuous deeds are, we were told what are the 10 non-virtuous deeds are. So therefore we will be wary of that. We will always be aware, and we will be careful not to step into those 10 non-virtuous deeds. And if we do not cause any non-virtuous karmas, then we will not be experiencing any non-virtuous effects. So therefore, in order to therefore, the 10 non-virtuous deeds were spoken, and the first of the 10 non-virtuous deeds is known as taking what is not given, or in simple words, stealing. Basically, we are talking about the stealing, not when we say taking what is not taken, taking what is not given. So in that there are three sort of different kinds. Taking something by force, taking something by stealth, or taking something by trickery. So taking something by force is through if I'm more powerful than powerful, taking something by force from someone weaker than you, by overpowering them, by manipulating them, whether it's their possessions, their property, so it can be anything, their body, so anything that the person which is physically weaker than you possesses, when you take them by force, that is called taking by force. And when you take taking by stealth is what we usually call steal or stealing, thievery. That if you steal something without the person's knowledge, so I may not be powerful enough to take something by force from that person as a robber does, but without the knowledge from the person, I take it stealthily. So that is called that is stealing, basically. That is stealing. Then through trickery, that is so I'm not stealth. Taking by stealth and taking by trickery are quite similar. So taking by stealth is what we usually call thievery, thieves, right? So first one is robbers. Taking by force are usually robbers. Taking by stealth is thieves, and taking by trickery is trickstars or cheats, con stars. So when I cheat someone, when I cheat someone, then I'm taking something that is not given to me by trickery. So the person has no intention to give me anything, but I trick that person to give me something through by manipulating their good intention and so on and so forth, and that would be trickery, taking by trickery. So any of these kind, when the person has no intention to give you something, but you trick that person to give you, you force that person to give you, or you conceal your intention as well as your action of stealing, of taking that object from the person, but when you actually take it, that is taking by stealth. So when you either take it by force, by stealth, or through trickery, you're actually taking something that is not given, something that is not yours, but through manipulating either that person's awareness, either that person's weaknesses, or that person's trust, and so on and so forth. So whichever of the kind happens, this is the first of the 10 non-virtuous deeds. That is known as taking what is not given. So when it comes to so in this particular text, so maybe I will read a little bit. I will summarize it a little bit. So the H.E.Tongkhor Rinpoche talks about the fact that when we are doing businesses, so we think we are doing something. Of course, it's legal to do business, but whenever we do business, we always. So what he's trying to tell us from a strictly Dharma point of view, when you make a profit, you are actually taking more than the worth of the actual cost of the object. So therefore, you are tricking people into. You are engaged in trickery. So that is one point. And another point I want to mention is he actually talks about the monks and the lamas or the monks, and even in his time he sees that most of the monks, a large number of the monks, were not doing Dharma, but actually selling the Dharma. So there are whatever action that they are doing, whether it is a teaching like I'm doing, or whether it is any prayer or whatever, they are just selling the act of doing the Dharma, but actually they are thinking about making money out of the devotees' faith through the actions that they have committed, and that is actually has nothing to do with the people listening to this teaching. but it actually is very much related to the speaker myself. So it is something I'm reading it for my own sake, so that I tell myself that whatever action that I'm committing, or whatever spiritual act that I'm putting on, is also backed by spiritual motivation as well. So this is something that I want to tell myself, just a reminder for myself. And so yeah, these 2 points I want to these 2 things I wanted to point out. So he says, the Zabedul Rinpoche says that instead of putting on this act of doing this, instead of just putting on the act of doing the Dharma, one should, the speaker, especially the monks, should think about the intention, the motivation behind the action that they are committing. And so one should not be distracted by ulterior motives, but rather with spiritual motivation, and then help others. So there was a there was a quote from, I think sometimes it is anyway. So it is something that I just want to tell myself. That's why I'm reading it aloud here. It is important at times. It is important to remind myself that whether you are doing the right thing or not. Self-introspection is very important, and so something that Zabedul Rinpoche is reminding not the listeners, but the speaker himself or herself, whether they are doing it correctly or not. And it is a very, very rightful reminder, and that I really appreciate that he put this in there. So yeah. And then in a connection to that, there was a story that Zabedul Rinpoche narrated, which I will share next. So the story goes that Jeju Milarepa, he's the teacher of Master Gampopa, who's the book we covered last year. So Jeju Milarepa, the great yogi of Tibet, he went. He's like a traveling yogi. He always traveling around to different parts of the Tibet. So he was traveling around, and he stayed in one particular monastery, and in the monastery there was a monk, like the head monk. So the head monk, so this is a monk in the sense that he wears the monk's robes and all that. So the monk actually, and Jeju Milarepa is a great yogi. He's a realized master. He has gained high realizations, and therefore has clairvoyance, which means can read other people's mind. So the monk was planning to. Milarepa spent the night there at the monastery, and the monk at the monk they have cows and yaks and other animals, and the monk was thinking of selling the one of the cows. It may be a yak, so one of the cows or the yak to a slaughterhouse to be slaughtered, and then he can sell the fur, the hide of the animal, the fur of the animal, as well as all the different types of meat for different usages and all that. So the whole night he spent planning what usages, what parts of the animal can he sell to different tradesmen, and how much money he could make. And so he the whole night he ended up thinking about planning different things, how to make profit out of selling the animal, the body of the animal, the cow. And one thing he couldn't figure out is what to do with the tail of the yak, which I think is a cow, because the tail of the yak usually Tibetans use it for as a fan. You may have seen in some of the historical, like the royal courthouses, they use the fur to produce wind. So I think it's a cow. So the cow's tail has no usage, and he couldn't find a way to sell the cow's hide, and he ended up the whole night thinking about what to do with the hide. And the early morning, like around 5 a.m., he woke up very early on, and then he set up all the altar. He made the offerings, do the prostration, and he was reciting the chanting the scriptures, the prayers, like in very loudly, very loudly and all that. And then he did his prayers very early morning, and then he came around and saw that Milarepa was just sleeping, lying down and sleeping, not woken up yet. And then he actually kicked Milarepa on the butt and said, "How dare you sleep like this? What a wasteful life. You are wasting your life. You're not doing your puja. You're not doing your Dharma work and anything. You're just wasting your life. Don't you even want to do Dharma practice, anything like that? You should have woken up early and do some prayers." And the Milarepa said, "I'm so sorry. I couldn't sleep the whole night, and that's why I have to sleep a little bit now." And the monk said, "Why didn't you sleep last night, whole night?" And because Milarepa knew everything that went in the monk's mind, sarcastically, Milarepa said, "Oh, the whole night I was thinking about, selling the cow to a butcher house, and then selling the hide to a different, the cow's fur to a different tradesman, the hide, the fur, the meat, and the horn and everything to a different tradesman, different merchant. The only thing that I cannot figure out was where to sell to whom and where to sell the tail, and that's what has been keeping me along the whole night." And that's what Milarepa said. And then the monk realized that he made a big grave mistake, and then he actually repented his negative actions, negative thought, negative mental actions. So that is one story that Zabedru Rinpoche shared in the book. Yeah. So I think there's my network is slow or something, so my video is not showing for some reason. I can't do anything about this. So the video, okay. So I will conclude the teaching here for today, and yeah. Okay. So yeah. So I will conclude the teaching here for today, and we will follow up next week from the rest of the 10 non-virtuous deeds. And if you have any questions, yeah, please go on. Or anything you want to say, yeah. So let's conclude it today. If there's no more questions, I will conclude the teaching today. So one thing I want to share is that Dharma teaching is not like any other sort of like conventional teachings where you study for a couple of years and then you finish all your studies, and then you're supposed to graduate, and then you don't no longer have to kind of go to school and that kind of thing. Of course, you don't no longer have to go to school, but you can always keep studying and studying even after you have graduated, so that you can study more and you can get a better job, or you can always keep learning. So learning never stops, even in conventional life. So and then when it comes to the Dharma spiritual life, we're conventional life, we are talking about 60, 70, 100 years alone. And when it comes to spiritual life, we are talking about not just not just 60, 70 years of this life alone, but countless of lifetimes in the future, prospective lifetimes. So therefore, the study, the learning never stops. The learning never ceases. We will always learn. And it is important to whatever teaching that you receive today, whatever the Dharma discussion we have today, always contemplate on what we have discussed today. Why is it like that? Why it should be like that? Why it cannot be otherwise? And if if this is the case for this and that, then why what will be the case for that and this, like that. So it is always very important to explore the possibilities and contemplate on the teaching the topic. So as I said earlier in the very beginning, don't think of this as a blessing alone, but more as a sort of like a training. When we receive the training, we are supposed to, when we train for something. The training is training is not the goal here, right? We train so that we can run better, we can run better, run faster, jump higher, or whatever reason. So the training is always there is a there is a goal beyond the training, and so therefore don't think of this the discussion we have today. We have the Dharma talks as the ultimate sort of the teaching, or the ultimate sort of the ultimatums, but think of that as an instruction, a training, a guideline that actually you should work on. And yeah, and that's it. And thank you very much, everyone. And we will do the dedication now. Yeah, thank you. Dedication, please. Yeah, well, your Dharma, 这我即将末日，嘛也罢，那么也罢，也罢，也罢，没罢了。